The December 6th update is finally here, and there have been some big changes with heroes and balance. Seven has received some new tools in his ultimate, Hayes caught some nerfs, and we got a new Hero Labs hero named Raven. So get subscribed and let's jump straight into Raven's kit. Raven's addition to Hero Labs brings a secret agent James Bond flair to the mode. At the time of Raven being added, he has his trusty Gumbrella and his 3 unique abilities. His first ability is called Blindside. Blindside has 2 parts, one being a passive and the other is active. Blindside's passive lets Raven deal more damage to targets when he is shooting them in the back. The active side of Blindside is a disorienting grenade that lowers the turn speed of enemies it hits and deals a little bit of damage, allowing Raven to get behind them easily and deal additional damage. Raven's second ability is called Umbrella Maneuver. When activated, it launches Raven into the air backwards, allowing him to cover a ton of distance quickly. When reactivated, Raven charges up an explosive blast and shoots it where he's aiming. This ability doubles as a great repositioning and damaging tool in fights. Raven's 3 is currently just a copy of Wraith's full auto ability, so we won't go into detail about it, but Raven's ultimate is Revelation. Revelation creates a field around Raven that deals damage over time to enemies looking at him. In addition, if enemies look at Raven for more than a quick glance, they'll be cursed and unable to attack or cast abilities for a few seconds. Raven's addition to Hero Labs makes 8 in-development heroes that are playable, so be sure to take them for a spin and let us know what you think. Now let's talk about some core system changes that were made this patch, starting with a very big Urn change. The Urn has a set movement speed when being carried of 13 movement speed. This number can't be affected by movement abilities or items, which make running the Urn much more consistent regardless of team composition. In addition, the Urn now always starts on Amber's left side of the map and will always alternate which side it spawns on, so your team will be able to coordinate every 5 minutes much more effectively. Another small change to sprint speed was also made. Valve's increased the base sprint speed of all heroes by 0.5, and has subsequently removed the same amount from sprint boots and enduring speed accordingly. There were also several big changes made to the items this patch. And the main change that was made across the board is reducing the amount of cooldown reduction available across nearly every relevant item, so get ready for some longer cooldowns. Now let's dive into some of the more interesting item changes, starting with the weapon items. Point Blank now grants 20% melee resistance when purchased, and while this buff may seem small on paper, it's a great addition since you need to be very close to enemies to gain the benefits of the item at all. Frenzy now builds from Berserker, inheriting its passive and boosting bonus per stack from 6% to 8%. It also adds 12 ammo, 150 bonus health, and 10% bullet resist, while retaining the same below 50% health stat bonuses. This will open up an additional slot for you late game while still granting the great bonuses from both items. However, if you are only building Frenzy, it's going to increase the cost, so make sure you get enough souls to purchase it going forward. Now Leech lost its cooldown reduction, which is a large hit to the item's efficacy, but it is now an upgrade of Healbane and now applies a 60% anti-heal for 8 seconds when you deal spirit damage. This change will open up the item to a handful more heroes since it will occupy the same slot as Healbane, allowing it to be built more often. Majestic Leap stayed the same in its stats, but received a massive change in the form of a revert. During the slam of Majestic Leap, you no longer get interrupted if you're shot, so you'll be guaranteed to hit the ground where you expect for those big plays. Now Silence Glyph received a great buff as well. The active now pierces through enemies in its path, allowing multiple silences at once, and in addition, its projectile size has been increased by 40%, making the item all around more forgiving. If you don't build Silence Glyph already, I highly recommend you start experimenting with it in your builds after these buffs. Knockdown has already been a reliable item in shutting down annoying ultimates or flying enemies, but now for the latter, it's gained even more efficacy. Knockdown stun duration now lasts up to an additional second longer, and the increased duration is based on how high off the ground the enemy is. So, Grey Talons and Vindicta beware, when you see the anvil, it's time to go. The December 6th patch also included some fairly notable balance changes to the hero roster as well. Starting with Seven, we see a massive buff for his ultimate, Stormcloud. When Seven casts Stormcloud, he can now also cast a single lightning bolt to strike an area that is inside his Stormcloud range. If enemies are hit by this bolt, they take additional damage and are knocked away from the center of the bolt. Now with the additional damage provided by this, Stormcloud's normal damage has been reduced a bit, but we think this is more than a worthwhile trade-off. Stormcloud also received an additional effect for its tier 3 upgrade that lets Seven actually move around slowly while ulting. With all of these changes, it's no question that Seven will see more play this patch compared to previous. As for Pocket, he received several changes this patch, some buffs and some nerfs. Starting with Affliction, it now deals upfront damage equal to 18% of the enemy's current health. With this, the DPS has been lowered from 27 to 12, and it's receiving a smaller range and spirit scaling as well. In addition to that, Enchanter's Satchel escape duration has been lowered by half a second to 1.5 seconds total. The extra half a second has been added to his tier 3 upgrade in response, so Pocket won't be as safe in the early game, but retains more of his late game spot dodge power. Now tons of changes are coming to Wraith this time around, with full auto gaining a base amount of spirit power scaling, which is being taken from her tier 3 upgrade. In addition, her tier 3 30% bullet lifesteal has been changed to 20% bullet and spirit lifesteal. Wraith's ultimate Telekinesis has also received a slight rework. Now instead of just lifting enemies into the air for a period, it now picks them up and slams them into the ground, silencing and disarming them for 2.5 seconds. And instead of the tier 3 upgrade letting the ultimate apply to all nearby enemies, it now only bounces to one other nearby enemy. Overall, we see this change as a net buff for Wraith, but it'll be interesting to see how both allies and enemies begin to play around this new ultimate. And finally, we get to the haze changes that apply nerfs to almost every ability with the exception of fixation. Starting with Smoke Bomb, Haze won't be able to run as fast with the sprint being reduced from 6 to 5. Haze's ultimate also received some nerfs, with his cooldown being increased, tier 1 spirit damage being decreased, but in return her tier 2 now lowers the cooldown by an additional 2 seconds. Last but not least, Haze's Sleep Dagger has also been reworked slightly. Now instead of putting the target to sleep after a brief delay, they are slowed to 2 move speed, and they're unable to take any actions for the duration. They do still wake up upon taking damage, so this only allows them to move a little bit after being hit. Overall, these changes apply a massive, much needed nerf to Haze and will likely lower her play rate by quite a bit. Now we pass it off to you. Let us know down in the comments how you're feeling about the changes, and if you want to see a more detailed breakdown of hero changes as well as a tier list, be sure to get subscribed for a breakdown coming this weekend. Or you can keep track of all the win rate and pick rate changes directly on the TrackLock website. Until then, good luck in your games and we'll see you again soon.